make sure that I'm always investing energy into, cultivating new connections and relationships.
Yeah. For me, it's like it's something that goes so far outside of my fellowship or outside of the rooms, is that like anywhere that I go, it's important for me to not just say hello to somebody, but just to like show them that kind of like attention. I'm curious. I'm fascinated with people. I'm fascinated with people's stories. I'm fascinated with how people got to where they are in life and why they view the world the way they do. Like what influenced their life to make them see things the way that they do.
Yeah.
Because I want to know, right?
And that's what we're tapping into, right? The human connection. I tell, whether it's at work or guys I sponsor or whatever, man, recovery is all about connection. And not just, like you said, people in the rooms, and, it serves a purpose professionally. I mean, you're a great example. You cultivate relationships with people that you probably wouldn't otherwise get to know very well,
Yeah. There's no boundaries.
Yeah, none.
But however, like you said, the importance of connection, right? And like, I hear that often, right? In these circles, in these worlds that we run, there's a lot of, if I could be honest, there's a lot of buzzwords, right?
Sure.
And that's one of them.
It is.
Right? And there's people who say it.
It is.
That don't actually live it, that don't actually do it, that don't actually practice it, and it's not a focal point of like their process,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I hear, like, I'm the type of person that have always tended to like do things differently. I think differently. I try to I don't take the traditional path, right? I'm like one of the trailblazers that likes to create my own path. And so things in my life, things in my recovery that are important to me, and now they have become these kind of buzzwords, like mindfulness practice, things like that.
Sure.
When I first started doing this stuff, it wasn't like, the coolest thing to do in the world. And so I was kind of like rebellious of me to like do something different.
Yeah. It's like recovery community trends.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just know for me, like the connections, when I show up to a meeting, it's important that there's a good number of people. It doesn't have to be everybody. And realistically, it's not going to be everybody. But there's a good number of people that I consistently feel a meaningful connection with. Not just, hey, what's up? How's it going? That's cool too. But I need those deep, meaningful connections that come with purpose. And that's what I mean when I say that, because like that's one of the things that roots me there. So when life shows up and pain shows up, it doesn't blow me out the door because I have some deep, meaningful connections. Why would I want to leave? This is where I find my meaning at with these relationships that I've cultivated. But it takes a lot of energy. And when people say connections, it takes more for me than just seeing people at meetings. Like I have to invest energy into being a part of their life. And hopefully they'll reciprocate, invest some energy being a part of my life. And who knows, we could form this deep, meaningful bond, and maybe not. But I have to keep on exploring that and be open to new relationships. And that's what makes, that's really served me well in my recovery. And that's what keeps me actively engaged, or one of the things that keeps me actively engaged.
One of the many tools.
Yeah.
So you're from Virginia.
I am.
How'd you end up in Asheville?
Well, I tell everybody in Asheville I'm from Virginia Beach because I grew up in a town called Portsmouth, which is like a little town that's really only known for shipyards and heroin. But it's like 20 minutes from Virginia Beach city limit.
And you weren't a seaman?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so I tell people I'm from Virginia Beach, but like I said, I initially started participating in recovery there. One of my very, very close friends moved to Asheville, and strangely enough, I always laugh at it now. He was like, "Yeah, I'm moving to North Carolina." I'm like, "Why the fuck are you moving to North Carolina of all places?" I knew nothing about Western North Carolina. I just didn't have the information. And he started telling me about this city called Asheville, and he started talking. I was like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. I did a little research. I was like, okay, I can see why you're moving there. So he moved, and series of events followed. I started visiting, so on and so forth. Networking here, making connections, fell in love with the area, and just had the opportunity to transition down here.
And immediately started working in
I
treatment?
actually, when I moved here, I started working with Nick. Gave me a job.
Nick Short. Shout out Nick Short.
Shout out Nick.
Episode 37. Go back and give it a listen.
Look, I love that you remember the exact episode.
I looked it
he
up.
was on.
I looked it up before
Okay.
you got here.
Yeah.
I did.
You got to have the facts
Yeah.
on deck.
You have to.
Yeah. So yeah, he gave me an opportunity. Like literally, I put floors down my whole life. And he just saw something in me, and he plugged me in. And
Was that something that you wanted to do? Like, when you left Virginia and you came down here, did you have the intention?
well, I mean, full disclosure, it was just a means to get me to Asheville,
Yeah.
because it was on my radar to move here. But like, I was at this place in my life where I was like, I'm not putting a crowbar on this situation. Like, I want it to happen organically. I'll get there when I get there. I don't want to try to force it to happen, like with a blunt instrument. And and we connected, and he told me about this thing he was trying to build, this vision he had, and he offered me this job. And it wasn't until I started to do it for a little while. In the beginning, it was literally like, I'm gonna do this for like 20 minutes and I'm out.
Figure something out.
Yeah. But the more I did it, the more I started to meet people in the field, clinicians and people from direct care. I mean, all throughout the industry, it started to appeal to me, and I started to see the need for people that were compassionate and ethical. And I started to pay attention, and it piqued my interest. And next thing you know, I'd stuck around for over a year and grown and learned quite a bit and made quite a few connections. Again, it goes back to I was cultivating connections.
This whole night's going to circle back there.
Yeah. That's the catchphrase for tonight. Connections.
What was life like in recovery back in Virginia? How did it differ from today?
Phenomenal. Like if it wasn't for people in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth, there's no way I'd be where I'm at today. Like they're the ones that were there during my struggling period of recovery, and they're the ones that I wanted to emulate, the people that I watched walk through life that showed me what a recovering man and woman looked like. And I still maintain connections there.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, it's still home. I have like 2 homes, and it's been such a gift to come to another area and build another network in recovery. So now I have 2. Like, I go back to Virginia Beach, and it's like being home. But it was great. It was great there. I had, we discussed my previous sponsor. He still lives there. I'm still in contact with him. So it was good. It was good.
So what was the urgency to leave? Just something different? You'd been there your whole life?
Well, there was a lot of, it was important for me. Like I did a lot of inventory on leaving and not leaving. I wanted to make sure I wasn't running, because I'm not big on running. But I had a solid foundation when I moved from there. And just one of the things that I've done in my recovery this time is when I feel not compelled, when I feel pulled in any direction by my spirit.
Intuition?
Yeah. Of course, I process it with the people closest to me. And if they don't tell me that, hey, you're way off, I'm going with it.
Yeah.
Like, we're on this spiritual path. What else do I have to go on? I'm certainly not trying to run off of this.
Yeah.
Because, I end up in some crazy spots.
Yeah.
So usually when my spirit tells me to make a move, I'm going to go for it. As long as, like I said, the people that I have those connections with, if I process it through them and they don't tell me it's completely absurd, then I'm going to go with it. And that was one of those situations. And and like I said, I had made a lot of connections here, and I had visited here quite a few times in the year leading up to my move. So it just felt right, and I went with it.
Yeah. They always say, like, to trust your intuition, but, like, so many people get that confused with the emotional relationship or experience. Like, are you being driven by your emotions, or are you truly being driven by your intuition or your instinct? And like you kind of hit on pausing and investigating it.
Yeah.
Like, are there strings attached? What is it that's leading me or guiding me to this decision?
I found that a good strategy for me is I feel that initial tug. I recognize it. I'm aware. Okay, like feels like I'm kind of something's pulling me in this direction. I just acknowledge it in the beginning, and I see if it has staying power. If weeks from now, if I'm still experiencing, then it's time to take a good look at it. My sponsor tells me all the time, man. He said, this is something that I carry with me to this day. On a spiritual journey, like if we ignore that, there's going to be some spiritual consequences. I mean, we don't know what that's going to look like. But if our spirit's, pulling us, telling us to make a shift or make an adjustment in life, that something's just not, conducive with our spirit, and we choose to ignore it, there's going to be some kind of consequences. Usually for me, it's pain.
Bad.
Yeah, it's pain.
Yeah, that's like the old adage, like sleep on it, right?
Oh,
that's
for
where
sure.
it came from. Is like because like something happens in your brain where you're like your brain can settle. I don't study neurology, so I don't know anything. But your brain can kind of like settle, and like the emotional. Whatever, cravings, clinging, attachment, whatever it is that's forcing it.
I'll never follow through with an idea that I have on the same day that I have the idea.
But it takes a long time to learn that skill, dude.
It does. And a lot of shooting myself in the foot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely one that tends to learn the hard way, right? And I would say that myself and most people who have experienced substance use disorders tend to act or behave impulsively, right? And so like something catches my eye and I'm on it. But I've learned exactly what you just described to kind of investigate it, And
that's recovery in motion, man. Yeah. Like you said, it's something I had to learn, through some growth and some lumps.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You've hit on like spiritual practice, spiritual principles. That words come out of your mouth a couple times in a short little conversation tonight. What's that all about, man? What does that mean to you?
Well, it's a hell of a question, but it's something it's very important and relevant to me. And we talked a little bit before about when I got clean this last time. It was something.
When was that?
March 17th, 2017.
Okay.
I'd been coming around for a while. Like I'd put together like a year, and then I'd go back out and put together another 9 months and go back out. And like I was participating, in my recovery. Like I was showing up. I mean, there were some things I wasn't doing. I wasn't invested all the way, which I had to learn. But anyway, when I came back this time, the guy I had sponsored me in Virginia was one of the things that he instilled in me. He said, listen, dude, like you keep putting together this little bit of time and going back out. He said, man, if you don't figure out some way to tap into this like inward journey of growth and transformation and exploration and learn how to live in a way that's conducive with your spirit, which is just a fancy way of saying live in a way that makes you feel good inside and don't feel like shit all the time. He said, you're never going to stay. He said, it's just not going to last. And, one thing that I've learned on my own, I share it with people at work. And like I said, guys, I sponsor, a lot of people struggle with, spiritual aspect of the program. I mean, recovery is a spiritual journey. I mean, to me,
life.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But to me, recovery is one of the great spiritual paths of our time, and it really is. And it's, I don't complicate it any more than like at first, very early on, I was sitting I was actually at a camp out in Asheville. I was sitting at this waterfall. I had like 40 days clean. I think I'd just come back from a convention in Seattle. So I'd had this like really good series of weeks. And I was sitting at this waterfall and just had this feeling of peace, that just everything was all right and I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And no matter what unfolded, I was going to be okay. And that's when it hit me that like that's what I'm trying to tap into.
And that's what he was talking about.
That's exactly what he was talking about. And learning to nurture that in different ways, different expressions that'll allow me to tap into that more frequently.
And how do you access it when you're not at a waterfall?
Yeah.
Learning, teaching yourself how
sure.
to access it in a traffic jam,
Yeah.
or when things are breaking out and chaos is unfolding at work, or whatever
Yeah.
the circumstances are.
Yeah, I haven't figured that one out yet. Do you know?
I'll share it with you as soon as we're done. I can't give my secrets away to everybody.
No, but yeah, for sure. And what I found that allows me to do is keep a peaceful baseline.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sure, dude, I'm cussing at people sometimes. I do it. I think I do pretty good, actually. But yeah, it lets me maintain a peaceful baseline. Man.
That was
like,
your first experience, though, was outdoors in nature,
For sure.
at the waterfall, mountains probably all around
Yeah,
you.
absolutely, absolutely.
I think there's something to that. You know, that's why like these wilderness programs are so catching fire, and like there's something about being in that type of an environment, right, where you can like everything, all the chaos in your life, whatever it is kind of like left behind, and
Yeah.
you're just out there, and you can you realize like how minuscule all those problems are.
Yeah, it puts
Right.
things in perspective. I mean, how can you stand out there and not come to the realization that, hey, it's not about me.
It's fucking not, dude.
It's not all about me.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, and going out and hiking is a very mindful exercise. As you take each step, you have to be mindful of where you're stepping. And, there's a lot of, spiritual traditions surrounding mountains. And the one I like the most, I think, and I'm not a practitioner of Shinto, but they revere spirits called kami, and they believe that each mountain is its own spirit, and that's why we get that
From
experience when we go up there. We're communing with those spirits, and like I said, I don't necessarily believe in that, but I find it beautiful, and I think about it when I'm up there.
Yeah. I live up at the top of Cullowhee Mountain. So Western Carolina University, and then about 25 minutes up the mountain. It's about 12 miles, right at the top of the mountain. Got a decent little view, but it's like off the beaten path, right? There's just nobody around. A couple houses, mostly snowbirds from Florida that vacationers come up throughout the year, but handful of houses up there, right? Myself and like one or two neighbors. And I've been up there since I moved here, right out of recovery. It's my family's home. It's my grandparents' retirement home. They had both since passed, and the house was kind of just up there. And found recovery. I was like, hey, I'd like to come up to the mountains and go to school. One thing that I noticed in first the spiritual practice and applying that to my life on a daily and consistent basis was that, and I can't explain this, but like something with just when I'm paying attention, right? And when I'm just aware of my surroundings, if I'm having a bad day or something is going on, like that mountain will just tell me something. That mountain will it will show me something, right? Whether it's like had a chaotic couple of weeks, just a bunch of sorrow, a bunch of loss all at once, like compiling two or three pretty significant events in my life just like hit me like all at once. Get home from work about an hour before the sun goes down. I'm like, all right, I just need to get outside, go for a little hike, just go for a little hike around the mountain. And I hear some and I was in a pretty bad mood, difficult mood. I hear some like rustling in the leaves, and I was just like, all right, I didn't even pay it much attention. It was a good distance ahead of me. There was no concern. I just like was continuing to just kind of like walk, and listen to the birds and watch the sunset and just enjoy the moment. I got a couple feet forward, and there's a big old bear and a couple little cubs. But it's like every time something, because I'm paying attention, every time something happens, the mountain shows me something like that. And like you were talking about, like it just makes me realize like that bear was a 400 or 500 pound bear. I mean, big old mama, right? That like all these worries, all these things that I'm stressing about are truly meaningless, right? Like here I am, have one of the most top of a mountain, one of the most beautiful views, like up in nature. I have nothing to complain about, you know. Things happen, some significant change came into my life. It's okay.
Yeah,
It's gonna be all right.
It's hard to stay annoyed when you're like in the presence of majesty.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah, for real.
like seriously, like it's there. You know, you can't ignore it. And you know, going out and hiking is, I mean, it's an analogy for life.
Yeah.
You know, the terrain changes. Sometimes it's flat, easy going. Sometimes you're going uphill and it's a pain in the ass. You get that point where you're like, what am I doing on this path? You know, I want to just take a right and go this way, but, you know, there's nothing.
Yeah.
You know, you can judge your progress by you pass other people on the trail and you're looking at them like, I'm hiking better than you are. Or somebody passes you and you're like, I'm a shitty hiker. Yeah. I mean, it's just the analogy keeps going and going and going.
Yeah, that, and I think it's a good metaphor for like the constant change of life,
Yeah.
right? And to be able to see the seasons and the uphills and downhills and just all those different things is the flux and the change of these experiences that we have on a daily basis, you know. It really like puts that in perspective. The mountain looks different every time I drive home. Every time I get up there, I see something different, you know.
Absolutely.
Constantly changing. Upon settling here in Asheville, you started working in the field, kind of getting your feet wet, and you realized that that's something that you did want to do.
Yeah, and I actually, I mean, I don't have any problem saying this. I certainly, it's not coming from any place of arrogance. Like I recognized that I liked it and I was good at it. And it was just something I wanted to continue doing. You know, I ended up getting went and got my peer support, and then I registered with the board, working on my CSAC. I'm about to take the test, so that's exciting. Yeah, and it's just something that I want to do. Like I said, I stayed with Nick for a while as his vision expanded, and I kind of got the opportunity to make a move and into a position that I could be confronted with some new challenges, which is what I was looking for. It would allow me to grow even more. So I moved over to Mountain View, which I really like. I'm excited to be over there. This was recently, about a month ago. So I liked, I mean, you know how it is in Asheville. You hear, particularly among the treatment industry, you hear who's doing what, and you know, Mountain View is always on everybody's radar as like up and coming, and you know, they're doing real solid work and ethical. And you know, I knew some people over there. I had known Ashley and Jay, and one of the clinicians is in my supervision group. So, you know, it was a natural move for me.
Natural fit.
Yeah. Once I found out that, you know, it was, again, it goes back to that thing is like, and I want to emphasize, like, this didn't reflect on Nick at all. I just was in that position. I felt like I had grown as far as I was going to grow in the existing structure. He still had plans for growth, but, you know, he's got a lot, you know, he's got a kid coming now, you know, the kid's about to be born. And I just started feeling that in my spirit. It's time to, you know, make a lateral move somewhere. And again, you know, like we already went over, I explored it and I sat on it. And then one day the position opened up. I met with Ashley, and you know, the rest is history.
Yeah. What about like upon moving here? Like you said, throughout all those trips, I'm sure trips down here prior to moving, I'm sure that you did form and create some of those relationships that we talked about. But what about for your personal recovery side? Like when you first got to Asheville, how did you find your crew? How did you find your tribe? And like how did that form?
I mean, when I first got here, that's all it was about.
Yeah.
Treatment wasn't even on my radar. If you happened to, if I gravitated towards you and you happen to work in treatment, that's fine. That's no different than to being a bricklayer. It's just your job. That wasn't even on my radar at all. I mean, it was just, I mean, you know how it is. You gravitate towards certain people, you know, and that's exactly what happened. And, you know, just like I did in Virginia Beach, you know, the networking, like, you know, I'd just see how people are walking through life and say, this is a dude I want to emulate. Like, I like the way he carries himself. You know, he's got something that I want, you know, and, you know, just ask him, how'd you get X, Y, and Z? He tell me so I could do those things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just spent time and effort, phone calls, man. Like, the phone is, again, for me, I can't stress enough. Like, I go to meetings regularly, but the real bonds are forged outside. When there's something about me reaching out to Steven and actively investing energy in building a relationship with you, like, hey, let's meet up, let's go on a hike, let's do this, let's spend some time together and explore this connection. And to me, those are the relationships that have grown into something deeply meaningful, the kind that it, you know, feed my spirit.
Yeah. What about the people that struggle with that? The people that don't feel comfortable doing that? How do you, you know, like, because
I've softened on that, because like early on, you know, I used to come up with that stuff like, well, if they had some dope, you'd go talk to them and that type of nonsense. But, you know, it's real, man. Some people do struggle with it. But here's...
it's like social anxiety, and feeling comfortable, and like the fog is just now, you know, early on starting to lift, and it's just not something that...
Yeah, and I try to deal with them with compassion. And if it's somebody that comes into my immediate center, you know, corner of the universe, I try to help them, maybe even introduce them to people, encourage them.
Invite them out or something.
Sure, exactly. But the harsh reality is, if they don't find a way to get past that, they're probably not going to make it, man. And that's why it's so crucial. Like, they have this thing, and I'm not knocking it, let me be clear. They have this thing in Asheville in the meetings I go to, where they'll ask people if they want a phone number, a list with numbers on it, right? But if you ask the people who have been coming around for a while, how many phone calls have they ever gotten off of that list? Because there's no human connection. It's just a random list of names and numbers. It might as well just be letters and numbers. Yeah. It means nothing.
There's no meaning.
There's nothing
behind it.
And, you know, the way I was taught, like, it's important to get to a point where you're willing to come up to another man or woman and ask them for help. Yeah. Like, that's a crucial part of, you know, beginning the journey of recovery.
It's like the vulnerability piece.
Yeah.
And the letting your guard down piece. And understanding that these people, we're all gathered here today. They're all just like me. We all ended up here together because of the same sorts of things, because of whatever, trauma, discomfort, things that have happened in our lives, circumstances in our life, brought us to this place.
But it is a complex issue, because I do feel like everybody's doing the best they can with what they're equipped with at any given moment. And if they're not there, you know, all I can do is attempt to, you know, a lot of ways lead by example. You know, let them see, you know, I like we talked about this before the show.
That's what I was telling you before, is that, like, I mean, I just met you an hour ago, maybe, but in knowing you and talking through Messenger and seeing the stuff that you post and just talking with you for an hour, like, you walk with a certain demeanor, a demeanor that is, number one, approachable, but number two, understanding, right? Comfortable, you know, like, it's, people see you and they want to know how you got that. Like you kind of said through the meetings, but like, you see that there's a certain demeanor that you carry, and it's consistent, right? The same dude that messaged me over the last couple months is the same dude that walked in the room, is the same dude that goes to the meeting, is the same dude that works on Mountain View. It's the same cat. It's consistency all the way across the board. right?
And I appreciate that. And I do try because I do believe that, I mean, we're all carrying the message just by how we live our lives. And like you said, it's important to me that some of the people that I've been able to help affect the most change in their lives, and this is most, well, in recovery and in treatment at work, have been because, like you said, they've watched me and like, okay, like, clearly this guy's got at least something going on that I don't. Maybe I do need to see what this recovery process is about,
And like you kind of said, I don't know if I think it might have been before we started, but like, we're addicts, right? And so we can spot bullshit. So like even if they don't believe what you're doing, like if they don't believe the authenticity behind it, they're curious because they want to see if it's real or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and in a way, like they're like, how could this dude be this passionate about some bullshit?
Yeah.
There's got to be at least a sliver of something to it, because he's like jazzed on this shit, and I am, dude. Like, I mean, you shoot dope for 20 years, and then you find this way of life that allows you to experience things that A, you never thought possible, and B, things that you had written off as even being on the table for you. And I want other people to have those same experiences, because it's definitely open to everybody, man. But it is like, it goes back to the people who aren't ready to reach out and ask for help, and we just got to meet people where they're at, man. And it took me a while to get to that point, because I want to be like, just do something different, and that's just not where, if I could just decide to do something different, then I wouldn't need recovery.
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
And like, I don't care what the situation is, confrontation very seldomly works, regardless of what's going on.
Yeah.
Take the recovery out of it.
And here's some real stuff. Like, it took me to do some work before I realized that I do that self-righteousness piece because it makes me feel superior. Look at, like, this is how you need to be doing X, Y, and Z, And it took me a while to recognize that, like, I'm clinging to that. That's just me trying to be superior.
Yeah. But at the same time, you found something that worked for you.
Yeah.
And so that's the message you were attempting to share. Mm-hmm. And coming from where we come from, it's a process to learn how to communicate healthy.
Oh, for sure.
And like, it doesn't matter if it's recovery. It doesn't matter if it's a pathway to recovery or a diet or an exercise or a keto thing. Or people find these meditation for me. People find something that works for them, and they just want to share it with everybody. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, this instant gratification world. You guys got to do this. Like, this meditation thing. This shit saved my life. Come on, Jeremy. Come meditate with me, dude. You got to do it, man. You got to do it.
No, I agree. It is enthusiasm, but I had to. For my own personal growth, like I said, I had to recognize
it.
Between the difference, because some of it was enthusiasm, but some of it was ego too. And I'm grateful that today I can meet people where they're at. Some people come in.
That's another one of those buzzwords that everybody uses and nobody does.
Yeah. Because if you're giving somebody some shit because you're just not willing to do anything different, you're not meeting them where they're at. Just keep coming, man. Just keep coming.
And like, I mean, if you're being authentic and being real with somebody, they always talk about planting seeds, and like, that's how I got here. That's what works for me, is that my second DUI in like 2009, they sent me to weekly outpatient group treatment to get my license back. So I went once a week to some place that I just randomly picked out of a book in my probation officer's office that just happened to be close to my house, so I could ride my bike there. And sure enough, I walk in and guess what? The dude's teaching meditation. And I went there once a week. I did what he said because I wanted to get my license back. There was no other interest outside of that, but I did what he said because I wanted to get my license back. And for that 1 hour a week, I experienced a tiny little glimpse of relief, right? Just a tiny glimpse of it. As soon as I left, all that shit was gone.
Yeah, yeah,
But that once a week for an hour, it was there. I got a taste, a tiny little taste of it.
yeah.
So fast forward 5 or 6 years down the road, when shit hits the fan, what do? I turn back to that meditation because it worked for me 5 or 6 years before. Started looking up meditation and recovery, and that's how I found Refuge Recovery, because I had that sense of relief early on. When I didn't expect it, when I didn't want it, when I wasn't there for it, it provided it for me. Here we are today. So it's hard to like, it's not tangible. It's hard to measure. You can't measure it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, you had to go through what you had to go through before you tap back into it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the journey. That's the $1 million question many of us can figure out. What's the magic words to say to somebody to make them willing? There are none.
How many times do people ask you that?
Yeah.
Every day, probably,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, there are none. I wish I had them, you know. I shout it from the mountaintop. But it's a process of, you know, becoming willing.
What was the spiritual journey like for you, man?
I mean, it's everything, man. I mean, to me there is no recovery, separating recovery or life from the spiritual journey.
Well, let's step back. Let's take it back to like the early days, and like you mentioned, like your sponsor kind of sharing stuff with you. Like, what was the process like? What type of action did you take? Like, you had him in your ear telling you like you need to turn inwards, you need to investigate.
I was doing some reading, you know, some Chopra, some Pema Chodron, just some stuff that was stirring some things up. And I remember telling him, because I was working with him at the time, he had a home improvement business, and he had me working with him, and which was great for me in the very, very beginning. I think I had like 30 days. I said, man, when I get on my 11th step eventually, I really want to get into meditation. He said, listen, you do not have to wait until you're on your 11th step to start incorporating some prayer and meditation into your life. He said, in fact, I encourage you to not wait. If that's something you feel drawn to do it now.
And you had that interest and appeal because of the previous readings you had done?
Yeah, and my previous experience in recovery, and this time, like, I because he had me actually read the 11th step out of a piece of literature that the fellowship I belong to has, and that stirred some things in me about the spiritual journey, and I was starting to wake up to what it was I was doing here. I wasn't just coming here to go to a bunch of meetings and go out to eat with a bunch of people and take pictures to post on social media as a group and stuff like that. There was something deeper going on, and I was gonna, if I wanted to stay and find long-term recovery and some relief from this pain, I was going to have to tap into. You know, I was starting to come to that realization. I didn't know how I was going to proceed, but I did believe, like, I knew this process worked. I've been watching these guys at the beach and my sponsor, so I knew there was some meat on the bone. And he sent me to this guy he had grown up with, who shout out to Maury, who had a meditation practice. He taught at this center in Portsmouth, Virginia.
Oh, cool.
And he had classes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 a.m. So first of all, it took, you know, dedication to get out of bed at 6 o'clock, go practice for an hour, and then go to work. So it was just doing that alone was beneficial to me. Mm-hmm. Just putting in that energy to do something different, even if the meditation hadn't resonated with me as deeply as it did, there was a benefit of just getting up and open-minded, going to this space.
Fulfilling a commitment.
But what happened was, like, everything changed when I started doing that. I mean, that's when my recovery definitely took a different turn. Like, it was like, you know, there's some formative points in my recovery, doing a fifth step. I mean, there's several of them. That was one of them. When I got like a new lens to view reality through, is what it felt like, you know, and a very practical tool to carry through my life. Because early on, I'm still dealing with all this shit, this pain from my recent relapse, and, you know, still carrying around some garbage I had never dealt with, even in recovery. And that was one of the reasons I couldn't stay clean for any sustainable time. And it gave me, a very practical tool in my daily life, the breathing. Change. It's something so simple, just completely transformed my life. Like at any point, I can come back to the breath and take my mind off of whatever else is going on. Even if it's for a brief second, I can stop breathing and it might come back, but then I can go back to the breath. Stop breathing and come back and just rinse and repeat.
That's the practice.
Yeah,
man.
rinse and repeat. And what I learned was after starting to practice that for some time, it became second nature, to where, and I do it now sometimes without even thinking about it. It's just reflex action, and it allows me to stay in that place of peace.
And it creates more space between those whatever thoughts that are coming, or whatever it is that's bothering you. It'll create more space. It's not as much back and forth.
Yeah, and it's usually some form of fear,
It's always underlying fear.
Yeah,
Fear of something.
Yeah.
Fear of change, fear of pain.
Yeah, mostly irrational.
I think the biggest thing for me was obviously that what you just described, but in doing that and like coming back to the breath and like my intention is to focus on my breath. In the beginning, my intention is to focus on the breath. And so that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm planning to do. And these thoughts are coming from nowhere. And what I learned just by watching these thoughts and allowing them to pass and coming back, that back and forth that you described, it gave me a clear understanding that I was not in control of my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
You can read it in a book, you can read it in some literature, you can read it whatever, but to actually see it and experience it for 20 minutes on that cushion or 30 minutes on that cushion, to see it was like, okay, if I'm not in control of these thoughts, and these thoughts are just generating themselves on their own from wherever, then all of these thoughts that are telling me that I can't do this, or that are telling me to go back out, or telling me to do these things, it's not, it alleviated a lot of that guilt. It alleviated a lot of that like underlying shame, and gave me some confidence that I could do this because I wasn't in control.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was relief from taking those thoughts that I wasn't in control of and allowing them to come into my reality and experience them as if they were all true. And it absolutely...
Or relating to them.
Yeah,
or reacting.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to react.
Yeah.
I can just ground myself again. Did your practice expand from simple breath work to any other types of meditation?
It did. I incorporated some different mantras, different types of prayers. Metta prayer has been big for me. Just consistently doing that I can't explain something so simple. Doing the cycle where you start off with yourself and you incorporate different people and you end up with everyone. And I think a lot of that is just, it helps me, whether it's meditation or prayer, to commit to a specific, like the metta prayer is the one that I do is like a 6-week cycle. So it's just I'm not saying I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I'm committing right now for the next 6 weeks. I'm going to do it, and then I'll revisit.
Daily or
something.
what?
Yeah. I've made it through a couple times. Okay. I'd love to sit here and say that I do it every single day of my life, but I don't.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
When I first started the mindfulness, so Refuge Recovery, like they have all these meditations in the back of the book, and they have a bunch of recorded ones, various apps and stuff like that. And it's like 50-50. So they have a bunch of mindfulness type practices, breath work, kind of like investigating sensations in your body, investigating those thoughts coming and going, but just always grounding yourself with the breath. And then they also have the heart practices, which are what you described, the metta, loving kindness, where you're repeating that mantra in your mind, a compassion piece, and then also a forgiveness piece. And so It's suggested to kind of like go back and forth, you know, to do a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of heart practices, kind of back and forth. But in my early days, I was like, this mindfulness stuff, it's makes me feel good, right? It helps me relax. It calms me down. It gets me out of my head. But I don't need all that lovey-dovey shit. It's like that. I don't need. I was like, don't hate me, Asheville. I was like, I was like, I don't need any of that hippie shit, man. I don't need that stuff, right?
Yeah.
This piece helps me. This piece alleviates that pain. It alleviates the stress, the agitation. I don't need that other stuff.
Yeah.
And about a year and a half into this process of recovery and consistently doing the mindfulness stuff every day and listening to Dharma talks and doing a lot of reading, I experienced some significantly traumatic events. I experienced a significant betrayal, a major physical injury, kind of a point of desperation in recovery, 18 months clean, a make or break point of desperation. Having done this mindfulness piece for those 18 months every day, my immediate response was, well, maybe these guys are onto something. If they say to do this mindfulness piece and it worked, and I'm in so much fucking pain right now, maybe I need to investigate these heart practices. Maybe I need to look at some forgiveness for myself for some of these betrayals. Because I was like, I would always tell myself, justify to myself that, I didn't, air quotes, I didn't harm anybody. I only hurt myself, right? Putting the blame on me, right?
Yeah.
There's no need for any forgiveness piece, right? Like, I don't need any of that stuff because there's no residual damage out there, Well, there was, it's just me like avoiding it. But having gone through all that pain, sorrow, despair, I was like, okay, it's time to really commit yourself to these heart practices because the mindfulness stuff has worked. It's done much more than just keep me sober. It's taught me how to kind of live and do many of those things that you describe. Let me try some of this. And that was the monumental part of my process of recovery. Sitting there and repeating the phrases of forgiveness every single day for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
And then checking out some of the metta, some of the loving kindness. And
Yeah, you find out how willing you are to incorporate some of this stuff in your life when it comes time to pray for somebody that you cannot stand.
Yeah, for real. For real.
Yeah, it's, but it's cathartic. It really is. It really is. I remember, the 11th step, man, is really what keeps my recovery and as in feeling like an exploration, like a journey. I mean, there's a lot of elements, but that's one that stands out to me. I remember when I was going over my 11th step with my sponsor, my current sponsor, we're sitting in his living room. He's got this canvas painting of flowers on the wall. And he said, tell me about this painting. And it's like 3 flowers. One of them's facing straight on, the other off to the side. I was like, well, I'm trying to get all poetic and talk about, it's asymmetrical and all this type of nonsense. And talking, this one draws your eye more than the others. And he was like, well, you're right about all that stuff. He said, but what you're describing is the content. The greater context is it's a piece of canvas wrapped around wood. He said, and that's what the 11th step allows us to do. Like we navigate our lives and all we ever focus on most of the time is the content. And we miss the greater context completely.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, he said with the practices, we can stay kind of plugged into the greater context of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all about me, the connection with others and stay, because, I wish recovery was one of those things where I could just go through the process and be cured, but it's just not. I have to consistently invest energy into staying in a healthy place or my mind state will inevitably deteriorate. all the way to the point, like I'm in a pretty good place today, right?
Yeah.
I know I've experienced it before, maybe not in quite this good a place, but I've been in good places before where I stopped taking care of myself, stopped investing energy into things that mattered, and I deteriorated all the way to the point where shooting some dope made sense.
Yeah.
And that will happen again if I stop doing the things that I need to do, you know. But the beauty of it is it's not like some sentence. It's things that I now have grown to love. So it's not a chore at all. It's become very much like the cornerstone of who I am. Recovery is just part of my lifestyle.
Yeah. Or even like recovery is just a part of the situation, but the lifestyle is the spiritual practice or the spiritual relationship or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it
Yeah.
is. And then the recovery part will come with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Through the actions.
Just take care of my spirit and everything else falls into place. I mean, I'm well aware of how cliche and cheesy it sounds, but it's been my experience.
Yeah.
You know, I just do a few things and put in some effort. Like I said, for me, it's all about consistently investing energy into the places that it needs to go in my life. And not just, you know, recovery is my life, but in those different areas, my job, I have to be investing in adequate amount of energy in my job, my personal relationships, my romantic relationship, all of that stuff, you know.
But it takes maintaining a certain level of awareness to be able to identify where you need to step up, right?
Yeah,
like,
and that's where the practice comes in, because without that, I can't. Without taking care of my spirit, I become unaware. I for lack of a better way to put it, I become less God-centered and more self-centered, and I don't see those things because I can't see past my nose eventually. And other people's needs don't mean shit to me, you know, and that's why I have to stay doing those heart practices. And because my natural state, as much as I'd like to say I'm just naturally a somewhat spiritual dude, that's not the case. It takes maintenance, you know, or it does deteriorate.
Yeah, totally. I wasn't. I avoided that shit at all costs, man, because I didn't want to feel it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. And one thing that I had to get past is I almost got to a point where I treated the practice like it was dope. Like it was something that could instantly change the way I feel. Like, oh, I'm sad, I can sit down and meditate it away. And and I had to grow in my practice to learn that that's not what it's about, you know.
It's the consistency. My teacher Noah talks about like the old, like the wartime foxhole prayers, like you're down in the bunker and the bombs coming, or the enemy's invading and they're down in their bunkers praying, like, no, because they don't pray every single day. They're only praying when they need it.
Yeah,
and now he's like, you can't use your practice like that.
Yeah.
It's about the consistency and sitting down, allotting a certain amount of time every day and doing it. And then not like beating yourself up if you miss a day or if you don't get to it today or whatever. Like the long-term consistency.
Yeah. And it does get a little, like, it does take time, because for me, like, I had to realize that because I would beat myself up, like, oh, I haven't meditated in 2 days. It's like, well, you're basically doing the opposite of meditating right now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I can tell you haven't.
Yeah. So it was something that, you know, and I'm still growing. I'm by no means an expert. I just know when I do these simple expressions, my life tends to be better.
Do you use an app, or do you
No.
just sit in silence on your own timer?
I usually play some Tibetan meditation music, and I like to burn Palo Santo. Something about that smell to me is soothing.
Yeah. See, I used to like do exactly what you were talking about, because me and my buddies use one of the meditation apps, and so it like tracks all your stats. It's like the watches and shit do. So it's like you got 57 days in a row, you know. And all right, guys, every like January 1, we're like, all right, dude, we're gonna get 1 year, 365 days. You know.
See, I couldn't do that because I'd be comparing with my friends who's the most spiritual.
They have a social network, and so you're friends with all your buddies on there. So I could go on here right now and pull up where my boys are at and see how many days they are, and then I watch myself, like I can see like all their stats, and then so like my one buddy at school, Trevor, I love you, dog. he was like, yeah, man, I got like 15 more days and I got 365 days. And then I go on this thing and I look at it and I'm like, motherfucker, you just meditated for 4 minutes yesterday. Like, what do you now you're going to claim that as 300, you know, and then I'm being judgmental, judging his ass. Well, guess what? He did it and I didn't. So, you know, like, that's just how it goes.
It's funny. At the end of the day, man, we're all flawed human beings, man. And all this stuff, like, life is hard, but all this stuff just makes it exponentially more manageable. It's no magic wand, not that I've found anyway, but it just makes life better. My quality of life is so much higher when I incorporate these types of things into my life. And for me, that's enough. Like, I don't need to understand it all the time. Like, I'm trying to move away from that, you know, and I just, like I said, I know when this is a consistent part of my life, I can function on a pretty high level consistently.
You notice a significant difference.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah. And it's been a huge part of my ability to stay clean, you know.
The meta stuff, you were talking about offering kindness, right, through the phrases. So I guess the way that the way that we do it, and I'm sure it's very similar, but the way that we do it is you begin like offering yourself phrases of kindness. May I be at peace. May I be at ease. And then you kind of begin to expand out to people who you love, then to people who you don't really know that well.
Yeah, neutral.
Yeah, but you don't have harsh feelings to, and then people who you dislike, who you have put out of your heart. And you begin to offer them phrases of kindness. Yeah. What was that like in the early days? Like, did you struggle with?
Well, in the early days, I was still so self-absorbed. I never got past to praying for yourself. I never prayed for anyone else. It was all me. Yeah. It was like, I'll get to that later. Right now, I need some peace. Yeah. You know, I need some happiness. And I was so self-absorbed that I actually I never made that conscious decision. It wasn't until I looked back in retrospect. I was like, damn, you selfish bastard. You spent 5 months straight just praying for yourself. Yeah. And then it was only then where like I opened up to incorporating the others, you know.
As for me, like I struggled with it a lot. And again, my teacher was like, another one of these silly recovery cliches, but he's like, fake it till you make it. And this is one of the only ones that I truly believe in. Yeah. It's like, just offer those phrases, whether you mean it or not.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, just continue to offer them. And one of the other things that he talked about was for the forgiveness piece. Like, how could I ever there's people in your life who are just like, no way in hell, right? Like this so he was like, make a list, 3 columns. Make a list of the people who are easy to forgive, the people whose betrayal or whatever wasn't very significant, you know, maybe the kid in 2nd grade that pushed you down on the playground or whatever, just easy ones. The middle column can be the people who, maybe some point, not right now, but at some point I could probably forgive them. And the far right-hand column is no fucking way. Not a chance in hell. Begin to work with that easy column first. Get through all those individuals on that list. When you get done with those individuals on that list and you do it consistently enough, what you'll see is the names begin to shift over a column. And the people that are on the maybe list, you'll find their names on the, I can do that list. And the no effing way people will be on the, maybe at some point. Yeah. Shit worked, dude.
Yeah. It softens the heart.
Yeah, totally did, man. Totally did. I noticed that you do a lot of travel. Or you've been traveling.
Yeah, I tried to. No, I have. And since, because I do have, prior to this stint in recovery, I had periods where I stayed clean like a year. So I was able to indulge in some travel during those times. So yeah, I've been traveling a lot for the last 5 years. I've just now started to venture overseas, so that's pretty exciting. But yeah, I like to travel and go to meetings everywhere. I've been to meetings in about 15 different states, and I network there, build connections there. One of my close friends one of my closest friends now lives in New York City. I met him traveling, attending a recovery event, built that connection, and now he's one of the closest people that I have in my life. So me and my fiance, shout out to the lovely Miss Katie Lowe.
What's up, Katie?
We just went to Thailand and Cambodia. That was exciting. Got to propose on a beach in Thailand. I'm proud.
That's where it went down?
Yeah, I'm proud of that.
Did she see it coming?
No. Surprisingly enough, because she usually like spots my shit. Yeah, but I'm proud of that. I joked with all my friends. I was like, y'all, from moving forward, every one of y'all are proposing in my shadow. Good luck. Good luck topping that one. It's all in good fun though.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just joking mostly. Yeah. So yeah, I enjoy traveling. It's, you know.
Was that always been something that was important to you though, or is it just?
I've always wanted to. Interestingly enough, I tell this sometimes when I share my story. I remember like not long before I found recovery, I've always been a voracious reader. I was in a grocery store. I picked up this National Geographic book, 100 Greatest Journeys, 100 Great Adventures. And I went home and read it. And I remember reading it in a very sad but accepting way. I remember thinking that like, man, this sucks. This is just the type of thing that I'm just never going to be able to experience because of the choices I've made in my life. I've kind of just closed myself off to these experiences. And one of them was Thailand, which I just went. And ironically enough, one of them was driving through the mountains of Western North Carolina in the fall.
Oh, shit.
So now I live here. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, it's something I always wanted to do. I just was never open to it. I mean, I never had resources. I mean, you talked earlier about I can't sustain anything when I'm using. Like I burn everything to the ground. Yeah. Like nothing. I mean, so of course I never had resources to travel. But yeah, I've been a lot of places in the last couple of years. New York a couple times, Baltimore a couple times, Florida, all over, Virginia, like Thailand, Cambodia. We're getting ready to go to Spain and Morocco. That's exciting. Yeah. And everywhere I go, I make meetings. And I.
What were meetings in Thailand like?
It was cool. It was actually wasn't what I expected. It was actually not one Thai person in the meeting.
Americans?
No, it was all Europe. I think there might have been a couple Americans. There were mostly Europeans. There was a lot of Swedes there.
Yeah.
And I remember the meeting was on surrender. It was a great meeting. This one guy had actually relapsed while he was there.
On vacation?
And he was just like running rampant. And his girl was there, and she was still clean. And it was just, yeah, it was a great meeting. And I actually took some T-shirts and gave them away. And you know, I got a white key tag from them. Not, yeah. Just to have one.
Yeah, a memento, keepsake from Thailand.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just make that clear.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I mean, I like to go to meetings all over because they do, you know, they're different everywhere, and the people are different, and I build relationships. Like, I have numbers in my phone from people in Portland, and New York, and New Jersey, and Baltimore, you know, and I call these people randomly just to make those connections.
Yeah, I'm going to keep circling back to, like, I don't give a fuck how humble that you try to stay. Like, the average person that I meet isn't doing that, right? Like, it's just not, it isn't as much of a priority to so many people, right? Like, you truly understand the value in cultivating those relationships, right? You truly do.
Yeah.
To the point where you're traveling around the world and going and finding a meeting and getting to know the people there is a priority to you.
Yeah, Katie and I cultivated some connections with people in Thailand, but we're still friends with on social media, and we communicate with, and it is important. I mean, it feeds my spirit, I guess. Yeah. You know, it pays such dividends. Like, it's what makes life an adventure. You know, I'm passionate about people, like what's going on with this person and what new relationship is going to pop up in my life to add more layers of meaning to the ones that are already there. You know, how is this relationship going to continue to flourish you know, as I invest energy into it and we navigate life together through, you know, new challenges and new adventures. You know, I have friends now. I mean, friendships change, relationships change and evolve. And that's why the ones that are deeply meaningful to me, like I carve out time. Like I'm uncompromising in that shit. I mean, there's some times where realistically, very small periods of time go by where life just it's not conducive to necessarily be socializing a lot. But you know, the relationships that mean the most to me, I make sure and carve out time for, period. Just like self-care, like I'm uncompromising. Like that's not something I'm willing to sacrifice for anything, for anybody. You know, I'm going to take care of myself because that's the only thing that keeps me functioning at a high level.
Outside of spiritual practice, what does self-care look like?
This year it's changed a little bit. I've focused more on taking care of myself physically. I've been able to get a gym routine going back, eating a lot better, doing the intermittent fasting. I feel great. I quit smoking. So I've been able to do some things to take care of myself physically. And, you know, mentally, I read a lot when I can, and hiking. I do a tremendous amount of hiking. Travel is a big one. It's a big one. You know, life isn't going to show up on my door knocking, asking me to come participate. You know, if there's things, people tell me all the time, they're like, oh man, you're always doing cool stuff. You're always going these cool places. I'm like, I don't have a monopoly on purchasing airplane tickets. Like, you can just log online, get
book
some
it
tickets,
in advance,
and go out. Like, I don't have a lot of money. Like, seriously, I don't. You might see where as much travel and stuff that I do and think that I do, but I really don't. I just know how to travel on a budget, and it circles back around to connections. A lot of these places I go to New York City pretty regularly. I'm getting ready to go again. Have a close friend there, so I have a free place to stay when I go there. So it's just, you know, and not that when I started cultivating the relationship with him, I was like, awesome.
I'm going to get his room.
I get a free place to stay in Brooklyn. That's just a byproduct of it, you know. So yeah, travel's a big part of self-care, and solitude has become a part of self-care for me. Not isolation, but carving out some time for me, man. Just going on a walk, listening to some music. Like I've learned that I need a little bit of solitude, you know.
Tell me about the intermittent fasting. What kind of results have you?
I've lost like 12 pounds in a few weeks. Yeah. I eat for 8 hours and off for 16. Yeah. I feel great though. Yeah. Like, that's more important. Of course, I want to lose a few pounds, but I feel phenomenal. Yeah. Like, I don't feel sluggish. It's great. It's great.
What are you doing? Like cutting it off at like 7 o'clock at night? And then
no, I do either I do 9 to 5 or 8 to 4.
So you cut it off at 5 or 4?
Yeah.
You go to bed early though? Not too much?
Well, no, not really, because I work second shift a lot at Mountain View.
I couldn't do that, dude.
Well, the secret is drinking water.
What's going on over here?
I don't know, one of your fans is about to bust in here and look for an autograph.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Plot
We're
twist.
taking selfies after the show, people.
Plot twist.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. I guess we're about to find out. She's coming through. She's got a whole bunch of keys.
Hey. Oh, okay. Oh, a picture? Okay. No problem. Yeah, so I guess I would have wanted to ask you about if you are concerned at all with, I've asked multiple people who work in the field this question when they come on, but what I wanted to know is if you have any concern at all in regards to the direction or the future of the treatment industry in Asheville. Considering like what has happened over the last 5 or 6 years, I have no idea who that was.
Yeah, that's all right though.
It might be like a Comfort Inn corporate somebody. I don't know. Shout out to whoever just walked in and snapped some photos.
And took our picture. Yeah, it made me feel kind of important actually.
Yeah, VIP baby.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm no expert in the treatment industry.
Yeah.
Like we were talking about earlier, like but I'm not an expert in airplanes. But if I look out the window and I see one in a tree, I know it's not right.
Yeah.
Honestly, it seems to me like the ship's starting to right itself a little bit. We talked about that earlier, man. Some of the shit that's going on, like, it's not sustainable. Like, I believe in life in general. Like, the universe isn't always just. Things aren't always fair. But for the most part, you can't do slimy shit and not experience consequences behind it eventually. I mean, it does happen for sure. But some of the, and again, of course, I'm not the type that's ever going to name drop or any of that type of stuff. But some of the grimiest people that I've known in Asheville, are reaping consequences right now.
Yeah.
And it's, I'd like to say that it's sad to watch, but it's not really. I mean, it's, they've created it, the situation that they're in. And it is troubling. It really surprised me because, like I say, when I got here, I come from a place there isn't treatment centers and halfway houses like, in Virginia Beach, unless it's changed, they got Oxford, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Here, like I said, every rich kid with 9 months has a halfway house. Pick up a year, we'll buy you another one. I mean, it's really crazy. And the thing here is like people in recovery, and I'm no expert. I'm just drawing on my very limited experience. People in recovery, it almost cheapens the industry because they think that when they get 9 months or a year clean that they're qualified to go work in treatment. Oh, that sounds cool. I get paid to go hang out with some addicts. That's not what it is. So a lot of these places are hiring people that just aren't qualified.
Yeah.
They don't understand boundaries in their own lives. How are you going to put them in this environment, expect them to hold space for people and to maintain boundaries? And that's like not even the worst offenses that are happening. Like, you got people, it is troubling. You got people buying kids insurance policies. You got people paying kids to go to treatment out of state, and the thing is, like, they don't even try to hide it. I mean, it's not like I'm up here talking about something that's super secret. Everybody knows. These kids are coming back telling everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet, X, A, B, and C paid me X amount of money to go to treatment. I'm going to get high for a little bit and go back. And, but it is what it is. I think that there's a lot of people in Asheville. When I first got here and most of my exposure was to like lower level. I don't know if lower level is the correct phrase,
Like
but
entry level.
But yeah, more entry level treatment, like halfway houses and things of that nature. That was most of my exposure, and then not even to the solid programs that are around. So it seemed like everybody was corrupt. But the more people that I've gotten to know, and as I've gotten to know people that are higher up on the treatment chain, higher levels of care and higher quality of, facility, overwhelmingly, there's some phenomenal treatment providers in Asheville. Like, I can name, there's some of the best programs in the state in Asheville. So I think the ship will right itself. I really do. I think the people that are unsavory are going to come in and create some havoc. The truly tragic part about it is, like, parents from out of state, they don't know who's who. They're sending their kid into a meat grinder a lot of times. But they think, they're desperate. They're willing to pay. They're sending their kid into these environments that are not conducive for them staying clean at all. And it's sad, because there's going to be some harm caused by some of these programs, these people that just, have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not pretending that I know what I'm doing.
You don't have the answers.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, like I said, I can look outside and see an airplane in the tree. I know it's not right. I don't know how to fly it out of the tree. But
and I guess that was my follow-up question, is that, like, I totally am of the understanding, like you, that, like, things tend to work themselves out, right? And
Yeah.
that those individuals who are operating unethically will, the wheels will come off on their own without
Yeah.
any type of influence. It's just we're talking about people's lives here.
Yeah.
Like the mother from Omaha, Nebraska, who calls up and puts their kid on a flight the next day,
Yeah.
never makes it home.
Yeah.
So like, is there missing pieces to this puzzle? Do we need like regulation? Is there something that like the community can do?
I mean, theoretically, would it be nice for there to be some kind of
Like governing
law
agency?
enforcement
Yeah.
agency that could swoop in and shut the doors of places? But there's so many variables. It's complex, and a lot of the stuff that's happening is being done in loopholes to where it's not technically illegal, and it's just there's a lot of different shades of gray. But yeah, theoretically, would it be nice for to have some law enforcement agencies show up and shut down every place that's patient brokering? Absolutely. And eventually I think the more blatant offenders are going to be shut down, but and a lot of them, to be fair, I don't think some of them for sure, some of them it's just greed and they just don't give a shit. A lot of it, I don't think there's any malice in it. I don't think some kid with a year clean thinks he's doing harm by opening a halfway house. I really don't. But is it really benefiting the people that stay there? And who knows, it might.
Somebody might.
Sure. So who am I to say? I just know for every person that goes somewhere that's not qualified to treat them, or its environment that's not conducive for them to heal, that's one person that could be somewhere with qualified people.
You mentioned a couple times people in early recovery working in these types of environments. How prioritizing recovery and working in the field and that sort of thing, like how do you find that healthy balance to like keep your recovery?
Well, I do want to say there are, there's some, and like I said, I don't have a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
So, but there's some people in early recovery that are rock stars at treatment because they do get that balance. Again, it goes back to being uncompromising, like and it's not even, I'm taking care of myself first and foremost. I don't care what else happens. I don't. And I am very selfish and rigid in that area. Like there's certain things, and there is some give. Like life shows up, and it's not going to line up every single day to where I can indulge in whatever form of self-care I feel like. That's just not realistic. But I am going to do at least the minimum. I don't care what else, what that looks like. What else has to be moved off of the board? That's going to happen. And it's particularly working in treatment because if I'm showing up not only for my own best interest, but for the best interest of the clients, I need to be giving whatever I have available to give from a place of abundance. If I'm giving in a way that leaves me in a deficit, it's not helping me and it's not helping them because like we were talking about, it's not genuine and it's not coming from a place of passion. And it doesn't resonate with them. That's been my limited experience dealing with them.
Yeah, and you've been on the other end of that too.
Yeah.
To be able to spot the bullshit
Yeah.
a mile away.
And because if I take care of myself at a high level, they can see the light typically stays in my eyes. That's what they respond to. I can talk as slick as I want and say these profound quotes, but if I'm just not there, I'm not. I'm in my head, I'm dealing with my own shit, like, they're not listening to me. I'm just another guy.
Another dude trying to sell something.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how they're going to react. Like, I got something for sale. And if I come to them in place abundant, I don't even have to pretend that I'm selling anything because then it becomes the kind of thing that sells itself. And they're just like, whoa.
I think that also just goes back to your character and the way that you carry yourself consistently. They can spot it. They can see it.
Yeah, I try to. And it's funny because they do say that.
It's consistent,
Yeah,
dude.
I try, man. I try. And that's why I'm uncompromising about taking care of myself. because I'm not afraid of what happens if I don't. I just know that it's a simple equation. When I do have a minimum amount, I typically don't get near the minimum amount, but I know about what that looks like. And if I do at least that minimum amount, my quality of life's pretty high. My ability to deal with life and navigate challenges is pretty consistent. If I get below that, it deteriorates pretty rapidly at that point. And then I'm not showing up for anything and anybody. And if I let that trajectory continue, I'm gonna eventually end up high again. You know, I'm convinced. I've done it before. You know, there's few things that have been more humbling in my recovery than being in a really good place and having myself deteriorate in a matter of a couple months all the way to a place where literally in my mind, shooting dope seemed like a viable option. Yeah, that really gave me some insight into the disease I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
You know?
When's the wedding?
October 6th.
Right around the corner?
It is.
Dang, where's it at?
It's at a place in Weaverville called Junebug Retro Resort.
Not familiar.
It's got a bunch of 50s Airstreams.
Oh, cool.
Vintage,
Yeah. Okay.
a whole
I think
bunch of them. Yeah. The guy, I was talking to one of my friends who was in the real estate in Weaverville. He said the guy bought it for something else, and he ended up not being able to implement what his original plans were, and he just like called an audible and built this amazing venue. I'm like, this cat is brilliant.
Yeah.
Like, talk about, you know, being versatile. Like, he just completely changed directions, and it's beautiful out there.
Yeah.
And, you know, of course my fiance found it. She's quarterbacking this whole thing.
You're just along for the ride.
Oh, yeah. Just
Smart man.
Yeah, just show up.
Smart man.
Just show up. Yeah.
Question, man. So one of the things that fascinates me, seeing as that you have this very clear understanding of both how to and the importance of cultivating these authentic relationships. One of the things that's like I am kind of focused on, and one of the things that I'm like trying to wrap my head around is this social media tech evolution that we're in the midst of, and trying to figure out how we can use these tools, these online web-based tools, to cultivate those types of authentic relationships as opposed to the way that we're currently using them today in unhealthy ways. Okay. So I guess just number one is like, no, I don't know if I needed the answer to that, but do you think that it's possible? That
would have been my answer. No, I don't.
Okay.
To a certain extent, because it's not genuine human interaction.
Yeah.
You know, and that's I think is part of, you know, and like I said, I don't want to come across like I think that I have some insight into social media, but I think that's part of the problem is an over-reliance on that type of outlet to nurture and cultivate those deep, meaningful relationships, because I don't feel I can't. I'm unable. Sure, it serves a purpose. Absolutely. I'm not bashing social media. I enjoy it. I really do. And it does maintain a certain level of connections. But at the end of the day, it's not genuine human interaction.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, even in the exchanges, like me and you messaging back and forth, I mean, we have time to formulate what we're going to say. When you message me, I have time to think of something clever to respond and make myself sound insightful. And you know what I mean? It's not me being, and I don't do it on purpose, and it's not, you know, but it's not genuine. It's not like you sitting here. It's not, we're looking at each other right now. Like our energies are in the same room. We're sharing this space, this experience. I just don't think that it'll ever, on that platform, it'll ever rise to that level. I do think it can play a role for sure, but I don't think anything will ever replace like what we're doing now.
My concern is just that like this form of communicating, and it's inevitable that is going to be like taking over our lives or taking over the world, you know, like that's
Yeah.
It's going that direction, right? So I'm trying to like get on the front side of it and like figure out a way that we can truly use it as a tool. It's just something that I contemplate a lot and think about a lot. And
well, one thing we can do is like what you're doing. You get, I mean, you know, start a dialogue about it.
Yeah.
Get people thinking.
Yeah.
Like, hey, am I really cultivating connection in my life by sitting in my room for 6 hours scrolling on social media? I might have just been exposed to 300 people I know, but how many of them were meaningful interactions? Just starting that dialogue like what you're doing right now, I think is, you know, because that's what it was for me. Somebody talking about that, you know. For me, it was someone talking about being aware of where my energy investment is going on a daily basis. And it doesn't always go to things that are probably in my best interest. And sometimes I will sit and scroll mindlessly for hours on end when I have things to do. Yeah. Or I could be doing things that are more healthy for me.
I do it just as often, and I justify it that it's related to this business and the thing that I'm trying to get off the ground, which is totally a lie to myself.
My lie is I have a lot of friends out of state, so I have to keep up with that. That's my delusion.
There's you know, I'm not completely knowledgeable on this, but I have noticed a couple of areas, a couple of communities that kind of have been able to build these types of relationships online. And it kind of goes back to like what we were talking about, like when we find something we're passionate about that worked for us, we want to like share it out with everybody. But have you noticed traditionally it's small groups of women, but they're like pitching stuff. They're selling like the keto diets, or they're selling jewelry or whatever it is. And they're trying to make money, and it's people call them like pyramid schemes and this and that. But I've watched a few of my friends who like get involved in these things, and they're pitching stuff all the time. They're trying to sell stuff to like people like me and you who are on the outside of this little community. But their friends that they make with this community, they go on trips together. They have these meetups and conventions, like, and I haven't talked to anybody about it, but I see like a sense of almost an authentic connection, almost like a brotherhood or a sisterhood, like these bonds that are created from two different people who are doing this keto diet.
Yeah.
And they're trying to pitch it to their other friends, but they're working together as a community online, exercising every day, checking in with each other on these video chats, and are really like bonding together and creating that sort of connection. I think it's inevitable that this thing is going to continue to consume us more and more, right? 10 years from now, you'll have some Google glasses on your face, and I'll be talking to you, and you can like Google the answers or whatever, you know, like it's unavoidable. And so like, I think that the way that we humans have evolved is that like, it takes us a long time to learn and figure these things out, right? Like the technology is growing faster than we can learn. So we don't know how to use it to the best of our ability. We do not know how to use it to communicate in a healthy way. But there has to be a way to do it. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's just something that I'm fascinated about. It's part of why I do this podcast. It's part of why I want to grow this podcast into like a network of podcasts. I want to have 5 to 10 different shows. All these awesome people who I've met from doing this. I have all this phenomenal equipment. I want to give you guys shows, you know. I want to have a 5 or 10 different genres. A women's show, a LGBTQ show, whatever. Whoever wants a show, I want to give them that so that they can begin that kind of process of using this technology so that they can be like we talked about with you, being that person who consistently carries that demeanor, they can begin to use this as a tool and begin to share their thoughts and their views and experiences with the rest of the world in a way. I don't know, just something that I think about. So I ask a lot of people, like, because I'm interested in it. I know I can't figure it out on my own. So I ask my people, like, what do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be a bridge, for sure. But and again, what do I know? Like you said, it's hard to conceptualize, something like that. It is. But to me, like, this is where it's at, dude. Like, this is where it's at. And who knows if this is the only, arena where it can take place. But it's the only one I've found. But who knows? As things progress and, new avenues open up, I mean, it's certainly possible. I try not to deal in absolutes.
You're open to all possibilities.
Yeah. I try not to deal in absolutes. So.
You said you're not a man of goals, man. What's next?
I don't know.
What's on your radar? What's on your radar to continue to challenge yourself to grow and step out of your comfort zone? Like, what have you done? Any meditation retreats? Have you done like a 10-day retreat? Or
I have not.
Is that something on
your
radar?
It's not really.
No?
Maybe it's not really conducive with my work.
That's what everybody says, though.
No, it's true.
The man can fly to Thailand, but he can't go to.
Yeah. Well,
I know.
I have to pick and choose. I have to pick and choose. I don't know. Like I said, I got the new job at Mountain View. I'm enjoying that, growing in that capacity. I am, like I said, working on my CSAC. I've been able to, under supervision, get my feet wet, doing a little bit of counseling. I really like that. I like sitting down. What I found, we talked about Joseph Campbell before and follow your bliss. Right now, the way that my spirit's telling me I can find that is interacting with, broken souls, man. Sitting down, and what I've found is, I do all right, at stirring something inside of them, and that's my passion. Watching somebody, the light come on, even if it's like what you talked about earlier, just that brief instance, and just coming up and learning new ways to kind of ignite that spark for them to say, wow, maybe I can find some relief from this pain I've been existing in for years. And that's, I want to move towards doing that, and being better at it. So whatever that looks like. Like I said, I usually I pick a general direction and I head that way because typically it unfolds a very different way. But right now, that's the direction I'm walking. And marriage, so that's going to be a new one for me.
Never married.
No.
Made it through.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Too, man.
Never married. Never married. And I'm glad. It's but she's in recovery too. She's uncompromising as I am. We're taking care of herself. Like, we make sure we're not that codependent recovery couple that sits together at meetings holding hands and that type of nonsense. Like, we typically don't go to meetings together. Like, we keep our stuff separate, and it just works for us.
Yeah, it's the best way to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely the best way to do it.
For sure. It was cool because it was like this unspoken agreement between us, and it's just what we've done.
It's worked.
Yeah. So.
Well, listen, brother, I appreciate you coming over.
Yeah, man, I appreciate the invite.
You're a badass. I would enjoy doing it again sometime down the road too. In the future.
Yeah, it was good to finally meet you, man.
Me too, bro.
I appreciate what you're doing out here, man.
Yeah.
I look forward to seeing what the future holds for you.
For sure, bro. Thanks again, man. You got any plugs? Anybody connect you? Got social media stuff? Share with anybody?
Nah.
Hit them up.
Nah.
Thanks for checking us out, y'all. Y'all have a good night.